This minimal FastMCP initialization creates a fully functional server instance, but with one critical omission. It has no authentication layer to validate incoming requests. You'll see how this two-line setup establishes the server foundation while deliberately leaving security configuration to be explicitly added later, either through direct provider assignment like JWTVerifier or environment-based provider configuration. The framework never makes implicit security assumptions, requiring you to consciously implement protection through the auth equals parameter before the server will process authenticated requests. From FastMCP, import FastMCP. Hash authentication, automatically configured from environment. MCP equals FastMCP. Name equals production API. This demonstrates the explicit authentication provider pattern, where FastMCP requires deliberate configuration of security mechanisms through the auth equals parameter. The shown initialization creates a valid server instance identified by the name parameter, but without authentication capabilities until a provider is explicitly assigned. This pattern distinguishes between server instantiation and security configuration, making protection mechanisms visible in the code rather than hidden in framework defaults. The approach works by separating server creation from authentication setup, allowing the instance to remain valid while requiring explicit provider assignment. Environment variables play a supporting role by configuring provider instances when those providers are explicitly created to use them, such as auth provider reading credentials from environment variables. The name parameter serves purely for identification and logging, while the absence of an auth equals parameter creates an unauthenticated instance that can still be configured later via MCP, auth equals provider. This pattern ensures security configurations are intentional rather than implicit, though it doesn't inherently prevent insecure deployments. The minimal initialization shown creates a functional server instance that simply lacks authentication, which must be explicitly added for production use. This design allows flexible authentication strategies while maintaining clear visibility of security configurations in the codebase, with providers like JWTVerifier, static token verifier, or OAuth-based providers added as needed for different environments. Let's break it down line by line. From FastMCP, import FastMCP. This imports FastMCP, the core class for building AI-callable tool servers. The initialization creates a valid server instance named Production API for logging and identification, but without an auth equals provider parameter, it won't authenticate requests. Authentication providers like auth provider or JWTVerifier must be explicitly configured via the auth equals parameter. These providers can use environment variables for credentials, but the variables alone don't auto-configure security. This pattern enforces deliberate security setup while allowing flexible provider configuration. Hash authentication, automatically configured from environment. MCP equals FastMCP. Name equals production API. This initializes a FastMCP server instance named Production API without authentication, creating a valid but unauthenticated endpoint. The name parameter serves purely for logging and identification, while authentication must be explicitly configured via the auth equals parameter using providers like auth provider or JWTVerifier, many of which pull credentials from environment variables. The comment accurately reflects that while environment variables don't auto-configure providers, they do supply credentials to explicitly configured providers, enabling secure deployment when properly set up. FastMCP initialization pattern. The FastMCP name equals production API. Instantiation creates a valid server instance with no authentication provider attached, where the name parameter serves only as an identifier for logging and management. Authentication providers like AuthKit provider or GitHub provider must be explicitly assigned to the auth equals, parameter, or configured via environment variables when the provider is designed to use them. This instance remains fully functional for configuration and testing, though it won't process authenticated requests until an auth provider is attached.
The server that begins with no gates builds all doors facing inward.